The armory was the quietest place on the base, and that was exactly why Sergeant Harper Lane chose it. The constant hum of the overhead fluorescent lights filled the narrow concrete room, flickering slightly in the corners, the sound blending with the rhythmic click of metal parts being oiled and reassembled. It was a mechanical sort of peace, one that didn't require conversation, explanation, or forgiveness. The rest of the naval base buzzed with drills, radio chatter, and the smell of jet fuel. But the armory? It was a world apart. Harper liked it that way. Every morning, before sunrise, she'd arrive with her sleeves rolled, her blonde hair pulled tight beneath her cap, and her silence sharper than the bayonets lined on the walls. She'd been doing this for nearly 2 years, cleaning rifles, checking scopes, counting bullets, maintaining weapons for missions she'd never see again. Her hands moved automatically. Disassemble, wipe, inspect, oil, reassemble. Her eyes didn't even blink when she checked the firing pin under the lamp's glow. Routine was her only friend now, cold, predictable, and safe. Once, she had been someone important. A Marine sniper, one of the best. Her name used to carry weight, the kind people whispered in briefing rooms when they needed precision. But that was before the night everything went wrong. The night in Kandahar. She never talked about it, and no one asked. Everyone knew the official story. Operative error, mission failure, casualty sustained, sniper blamed. The rumors had traveled faster than the bullets that night. By the time she returned stateside, her reputation was gone. Command didn't court-martial her. They just quietly reassigned her. Logistics Division, they'd said. But Harper knew what that meant. Exile with a paycheck. Now she lived in silence. She didn't hate it, not exactly. She had made peace with being invisible. Invisible people didn't get hurt. But sometimes, when she was alone, and the hum of the lights was the only sound left, her mind replayed that single flash of memory. Her partner, Reese, calling her name through the static, the sound of gunfire echoing, then silence. A silence much heavier than this one. Her fingers froze on the barrel of a disassembled M4 carbine. She inhaled sharply, forcing the thought away, pressing the memories back into the locked vault she'd built inside herself. "Focus, Harper," she whispered under her breath. And so she did, until the sound of footsteps broke her solitude. Heavy, deliberate military boots, not the usual recruits who came in fumbling for replacement magazines. These steps carried authority. She didn't look up right away. Whoever it was, they'd either turn around or leave when they saw her absorbed in work. That was the unspoken rule of the armory. You left Harper Lane alone. The boots stopped right beside her table. She could feel the presence before she saw it. Tall, confident, radiating command energy. Slowly, she lifted her gaze. Standing there was a man in combat fatigues, broad-shouldered, his uniform marked with the unmistakable gold trident of a Navy SEAL commander. His jawline was defined, his dark eyes focused with a mix of intensity and curiosity. He didn't look like the kind of man who came here for a routine inspection. "Sergeant Harper Lane?" His voice was deep, calm, but it carried weight, the kind that could silence a room. Harper's brow furrowed slightly. She wasn't used to hearing her full name anymore. Most people on base just called her Armory, or didn't speak to her at all. "Yes, sir," she said evenly, setting down the rifle. "You need something cleaned?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, almost amused. "Not exactly." He took a slow look around the room, eyes scanning the neatly arranged racks of weapons, the precision of her workspace. "You keep things tight," he said. "Impressive." Harper said nothing. Compliments weren't currency she traded in. He turned back to her, arms crossed. "I'm Commander Mason Cole," he introduced. "SEAL Team 7. She nodded politely, but didn't extend her hand. SEALs were elite, the best of the best. Men like him operated in a world she no longer belonged to. "What can I do for you, Commander?" Mason studied her face, as if searching for something behind the mask of professionalism. "I read your file." Harper's stomach tightened. She kept her tone flat. "A lot of people have, and most of them don't read past the second page," Mason said quietly. That caught her attention. Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp, guarded. He stepped closer, his boots echoing softly against the concrete. "I did. Kandahar wasn't your fault." Harper froze. The words hit harder than any reprimand she'd ever received. No one, not once, had said that to her. Not her CO, not her teammates, not the board who reassigned her. "How do you know that?" she asked quietly. "I know because I've seen that kind of setup before," Mason said. "Wrong intel. Bad extraction timing. You took the blame because you survived." She looked away, jaw tightening. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of unsaid truth. Then Mason broke it with 4 words that would change everything. "Pack your kit, Lane." Harper blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're coming with me," he said simply, as if it were already decided. Her brows furrowed. "Commander, I think you have the wrong person. I don't go anywhere anymore. I clean guns." Not anymore," he interrupted. "We've got a situation. Classified, remote rescue op. You're being reassigned, temporarily. By whose order?" she demanded. "Mine." He held her gaze, firm but not unkind. There was something in his expression she hadn't seen in a long time. Not pity, not command, belief. For a long moment, Harper just stared at him, trying to decide if this was some kind of cruel joke. Then she noticed the detail on his uniform, frost residue near his boots, snow caught on the Velcro straps, his gloves still damp. He had just come in from the field. This wasn't a setup. This was real. "What kind of mission?" she asked carefully. Mason hesitated before answering. "One that needs someone who doesn't miss." Her pulse quickened. That old, dangerous part of her, the one that had been buried under guilt and silence, began to stir. He turned toward the door. "Briefing in 15 minutes, room B12. Don't be late." Then he left, his footsteps fading down the corridor, leaving Harper alone again. Only this time, the silence wasn't peaceful. It buzzed, alive with questions. She stood there for a long while, her reflection staring back from the rifle's polished metal. She didn't trust easily, especially not after what happened. But Mason's voice, his certainty, it had cracked something inside her armor. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her gear bag, the one she hadn't touched since Kandahar. She unzipped it slowly, a scent of oil and gunmetal filling the air. Inside lay her custom rifle, black, sleek, engraved with a single word, Reese, her partner's name. She traced the letters with her thumb, exhaled deeply, then began packing her kit with methodical precision. Ammunition, cleaning rods, scope lenses, field gloves. Each item clicked into place like muscle memory, coming back to life. The hum of the lights felt different now, no longer the sound of exile, but of awakening. By the time she slung the rifle over her shoulder and looked toward the armory door, Harper Lane was no longer just a forgotten sergeant. She was a soldier again, and whatever waited in that briefing room, she knew one thing. The silence was finally over. The briefing room smelled faintly of coffee and tension. The lights were dimmed, the projector humming softly, casting blue light over a table lined with battle-hardened seals. Maps of Alaska glowed on the wall, ridges, frozen rivers, and satellite grids marked with red circles. The words Operation Cold Reach flickered across the screen in bold white letters. Harper Lane stood in the doorway for a moment, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, rifle case in hand. Conversations died as soon as she entered. Heads turned, all male, all trained, all skeptical. She could feel it immediately, the weight of her reputation. Commander Mason Cole didn't look up at her arrival. He stood near the front, laser pointer in hand, focused on the map. "We've got a missing team," he said. 4 U.S. intelligence operatives went dark 72 hours ago in the Alaskan interior. Their last transmission was here. He tapped a frozen valley, deep in the Chagak mountain range. Before the signal cut off, he switched slides. A black and white drone image appeared, showing the wreckage of a downed aircraft half buried in snow. Their transport went down in a storm. Satellite shows movement in the area, not ours. Locals report unmarked vehicles moving along the ridge. We believe they've been captured. Harper quietly set her bag down and leaned against the wall, observing. Mason's voice was steady, sharp, the tone of a man who had led missions in the kind of darkness most people never survived. "Extraction is impossible by air," he continued. "Weather's too unstable. We go in by land. 3 days to reach them, maybe less if conditions hold." He clicked again. The next slide showed heat signatures scattered around the crash site. Hostiles unknown. Could be private contractors. Could be worse. A SEAL near the front, tall, muscular, with a shaved head, raised a hand. "Commander, with all due respect, why bring her?" He nodded subtly toward Harper. "This op's high risk. We need active snipers, not logistics." The words hung heavy. A few others exchanged glances. Mason's eyes flicked toward Harper, then back to the map. "We need someone who can track movement over frozen terrain. Someone who can shoot straight in a crosswind at 700 yards. There's only one person on this base who's done both." The soldier folded his arms. "Yeah, but she—" "That's enough, Torres," Mason interrupted, his tone icy. Silence. Harper's gaze didn't waver. She didn't need defending. She'd been through worse than judgmental stares. But still, something about Mason's confidence unsettled her. He was risking credibility by bringing her, and she couldn't yet tell if it was faith or foolishness. Mason turned back to the group. "We leave at 0600. Mission duration, 5 days max. Cold weather gear, full tactical loadouts. We move light and fast." He paused, letting his eyes sweep across the room. "And one more thing, no comes chatter. This mission stays black until it's over. No one outside this room knows we're going." He set the remote down and looked directly at Harper for the first time since she'd walked in. "Sergeant Lane, you'll serve as Overwatch. Your call signs and target designations are in the packet. Review them before wheels up." Her voice was calm, professional. "Understood, Commander." "Good. Gear up and get some rest." The SEALs stood, scraping chairs against the floor, muttering quietly as they filed out. A few gave her curt nods. Most avoided her eyes. When the room cleared, Mason stayed behind, gathering files into a folder. Harper approached the table. "You really think this is a good idea?" she asked. He glanced up. "What? Bringing you?" "Yes," Mason exhaled, setting the papers aside. "I don't gamble on bad ideas, Lane. I read your service record. You're good, better than good. I don't care what happened in Kandahar." She folded her arms. "You should. People died. And you didn't," he replied firmly. "That's what makes you useful. You've seen what happens when everything falls apart, and you don't freeze." His words lingered, and for the first time, Harper didn't have a rebuttal. She looked down at the map still projected on the wall. Jagged peaks, endless snow, and somewhere out there, a handful of missing Americans. Why me, really? She asked softly. There are active snipers on base. Men you trust. I don't need men I trust, Mason said. I need someone who doesn't need saving. That caught her off guard. She met his eyes, searching for arrogance, pity, anything. But there was nothing except truth. He slung his pack over his shoulder and started for the door. 0600 sharp, he said. Don't be late. When he was gone, Harper stood alone in the blue glow of the projector. The Alaskan range stared back at her from the wall, vast and merciless. She thought of the last mission she'd led, the blinding sandstorm, the radio static, the sound of Reese's voice breaking off mid-sentence. She thought of how silence had followed her home like a ghost. Now she was heading into another kind of storm, colder, quieter, deadlier. The next morning came fast. At 0530, Harper stood on the tarmac, breath clouding in the Predone air. The base was still half asleep. Only the distant whine of generators and the metallic creak of rotor blades cut through the darkness. A gray MH-60 helicopter waited at the edge of the pad, its engines idling, crew loading crates of equipment. She wore a snow camouflage suit, her rifle strapped across her back, her duffel secured tight. The cold bit into her fingers, even through gloves. Mason emerged from the hangar, helmet tucked under his arm, his breath steaming in the air. His presence had a steadiness that made everyone around him sharper, quieter. Morning, Lane, he said. She nodded. You're sure we're not walking into another ghost story? He smiled faintly. If it were ghosts, it'd be easier. One by one, the SEALs boarded the chopper. Torres, McCready, Holt, and Vega. They moved efficiently, checking weapons, adjusting straps, securing ropes. Harper climbed aboard last, taking the rear seat near the window. The rotors spun faster, wind whipping snow across the pad. As the chopper lifted, the base shrank beneath them, lights fading into darkness. Harper watched the horizon turn gray, mountains rising like frozen titans against the dawn. For a while, no one spoke. The hum of the engine was the only sound. Then Mason's voice came through the combs. 30 minutes to insertion point. Torres glanced back at Harper. You really up for this, Lane? He asked, his tone half mocking, half curious. She met his gaze evenly. If I weren't, you'd already know. That shut him up. The team exchanged glances, a mix of skepticism and respect forming quietly among them. Harper returned her attention to the window, tracing the ridgelines below. Snow, ice, and nothing else for miles. A storm was building in the distance. She could see the swirling clouds over the range. Mason noticed too. Weather's turning faster than expected, he said. We'll have to move quick once we're down. Harper checked her scope again, adjusting the settings for the glare. The glass reflected her eyes, focused, unreadable. It had been years since she'd felt this alive, that nervous, razor-edged calm that came right before a mission. The silence in her chest wasn't grief anymore. It was readiness. As the helicopter descended through clouds, Mason's voice crackled again. Remember, this is a ghost stop. No backup, no satellite, no second chances. The landing zone came into view, a wide stretch of ice between cliffs, blanketed by snow. The pilot fought the wind, the chopper shaking violently. Harper gripped the harness, adrenaline surging. Hold tight. The pilot yelled. The skids hit the ice hard, snow blasting up around them. Mason gave the signal. The team leapt out into the storm, boots sinking deep into the powder. Harper followed, rifle in hand, her breath visible in the freezing air. The helicopter lifted off, disappearing into the gray sky. And just like that, they were alone. 6 souls lost in the white wilderness of Alaska. Ahead of them, mountains loomed like walls of silence. Somewhere beyond those peaks, a downed plane and 4 missing Americans waited. Mason turned to his team, voice steady through the wind. "Move out." Harper fell into step behind him, eyes scanning the horizon. The snow crunched beneath her boots. The cold gnawed at her skin. And for the first time in years, she felt it again. That unshakable instinct. The mission heartbeat. The pull of purpose. Whatever waited out there, she knew one thing for certain. This time, she wouldn't miss. The Alaskan wilderness didn't welcome strangers. It swallowed them whole. Snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, carried sideways by wind that cut through even the heaviest gear. Each breath came out in a cloud that instantly froze, turning faces red and raw. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, white, sharp, merciless. Harper Lane trudged at the rear of the 6-person formation, her rifle strapped diagonally across her chest, her boots crunching in rhythm with the team's. Visibility was down to less than 50 feet. Even the mountains, towering walls of ice and stone, blurred into ghostly silhouettes through the storm. They'd been moving for 3 hours since the helicopter disappeared behind the horizon. No radio signal. No backup. Just the low hum of wind screaming through the valleys. Mason led from the front, his figure partially obscured by snow and fog. Every few minutes, he'd raise a hand, signaling a stop or a change in direction. Harper watched how he moved, cautious but efficient. He navigated the terrain like someone who'd done it 100 times before. Behind him, Torres carried the Combs pack, muttering curses every time the wind nearly knocked him off balance. Holt and Vega flanked Mason, scanning the ridges through their goggles. McCready, the youngest, carried extra ammo and medical gear, his breath ragged and fast. Harper, as Overwatch, stayed silent, her eyes constantly scanning the tree line. Her instincts, sharpened by years in combat, felt the unease before her mind could name it. Something was off. The snowstorm was heavy, but not natural. The gusts came in rhythmic waves, short bursts, then eerie calm. Like someone or something was trying to hide movement within the chaos. She adjusted her thermal scope, sweeping the ridge to the east. The screen showed nothing but cold, blue and white static. No heat signatures. No life. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. "Cole," she said through her headset. "Check your left flank. Something's not right." Mason turned slightly, scanning the ridge. "You see something?" "Not yet," she replied. "That's the problem." He nodded once, trusting her instinct without question. "Torres, shift formation. Tighten up." The team adjusted, moving closer, rifles up. The wind howled harder, pelting them with snow so thick it stung the skin. Harper's thoughts drifted for a moment, to the first time she'd ever tracked in conditions like this. Afghanistan had been heat, dust, and light. Here, everything was its opposite: cold, silence, and shadow. But one thing never changed. Death always felt the same just before it arrived. "Stop," Mason said suddenly. His voice came low but sharp. The team froze. He crouched, brushing snow away from the ground with a gloved hand. Beneath the surface, faint but clear, were boot prints. Not theirs. Different tread, wider spacing. Someone had passed through recently. Mason's eyes met Harper's. "Your read?" She knelt beside him, studying the tracks. The snow had only just begun covering them. 3 men, maybe 4, she murmured. Moving fast. Patterns defensive. They were either being chased or expecting to be. Hostiles? Could be. She looked toward the ridge, the storm swirling like smoke. Could also be the intel team. Mason nodded once. "Let's find out." They followed the trail for nearly a mile, winding through frozen brush and over jagged terrain. The snow lightened briefly, giving them clearer visibility. That's when Harper saw it. A glint of metal ahead, half buried in snow. She raised a fist. Stop. The team dropped to their knees instantly, rifles aimed forward. Harper crawled ahead, brushing away the snow. The outline of a wrecked aircraft emerged, the remains of a small transport plane, its fuselage torn open like paper. Bullet holes peppered the side. Smoke stains blackened the metal. Found the transport, she whispered into her comms. Mason approached carefully. Any sign of survivors? Harper's voice dropped. No bodies yet. But then she spotted something in the cockpit, a flash of color against the dull gray metal. She climbed up, stepping lightly across the wing. Inside the cockpit, she found a shredded jacket with a U.S. flag patch. Blood had frozen into the fabric. Her stomach sank. One of the pilots had tried to crawl out before freezing. His hand was still gripping the handle near the hatch, fingers turned white and brittle from frostbite. MacCready looked away. Jesus? Keep your focus, Mason said. They didn't all die here. Look for tracks. Harper scanned again, using her thermal scope. This time, faint orange spots flickered faintly to the north. Heat signatures, she said. Maybe half a click out. Weak but steady. That's our team, Mason said immediately. Let's move. The group advanced, keeping low, moving between snowdrifts and sparse trees. Harper led this time, following the faint signatures. The closer they got, the more she felt her pulse rise. The heat signals were too static, too still. Something wasn't right. She raised her hand, signaling Mason. Wait. He approached, crouching beside her. What is it? Those aren't people, she said. They're bait. Before Mason could answer, the ridge above them erupted in gunfire. Bullets tore through the air, shredding snow and bark. The team dove for cover, rolling behind a fallen tree. The sound was deafening, gunfire cracking like thunder, echoing across the valley. Contact left. Torres yelled. Harper's rifle was up instantly. Through her scope, she saw figures, dark, fast, moving with military precision. Whoever they weren't amateurs. She took a breath. One target popped up from behind a boulder. She squeezed the trigger. Crack. He dropped. Another moved through the snow. Crack. Down. She adjusted her scope, calculating wind, distance, recoil. Her body moved like muscle memory had taken over. Every shot was clean. Mason was shouting orders through the storm. Halt, flank right. MacCready, smoke out. A grenade hissed and exploded, filling the ridge with white smoke. Harper's vision blurred for a second, but she stayed locked on her sector. Through the haze, she caught sight of something, a flash of red cloth tied around one of the attacker's arms. Not Russian, not mercenary, something else. Her gut twisted. Mason, she called. They're not random hostiles. What do you mean? They're trained U.S. pattern movement. Formation tactics. Somebody's using our own playbook. The firefight raged for another 5 minutes before Mason's team managed to suppress the last of them. Silence returned, but it wasn't peace. It was the heavy quiet that always followed death. Snow began falling again, gently now, covering bodies and footprints alike. Torres kicked one of the attackers over and tore the mask from his face. He froze. Sir, these guys aren't foreigners. Harper moved closer. The man's skin was pale, clean-shaven. His gear was American-issued. His uniform patch had been torn off, but there was no mistaking the make. Mason knelt, inspecting the body. Contractors, maybe? Private? Harper asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the man's pocket and pulled out a small encrypted radio. The screen was still lit, displaying coordinates. Harper leaned in. The numbers were familiar. They matched the last known location of the missing intel team. This wasn't an ambush, she said softly. This was a setup. Mason's jaw tightened. Which means whoever we're looking for already knows we're coming. The wind picked up again, howling through the trees like a warning. Harper adjusted her rifle strap, her breath visible in the cold. For the first time since she'd left the armory, fear crept back into her chest, not of dying, but of what they might find next. She looked toward the horizon, where the storm clouds rolled heavier, darker. Somewhere beyond those peaks, someone was watching. Someone who knew her name. The storm didn't ease. It grew worse. By the time Harper and the team set up a temporary perimeter, the wind had turned savage, roaring through the pines like an angry beast. Snow whipped across their faces, stinging their skin, reducing visibility to barely an arm's length. The dead attackers were already half buried by drifting powder. Harper crouched near the bodies, her gloved hands searching for anything that could tell them who these men were. She found no dog tags, no unit patches, no personal effects. Just the same black tactical uniforms, same weapons, all high-grade American issue, modified with silencers and digital scopes. She wiped the snow off a rifle stock and frowned. These aren't off-market, she murmured. They're straight out of Langley. Torres turned confused. CIA gear? Mason's eyes narrowed. Or someone with access to their inventory. Harper stood, holding the encrypted radio she'd taken earlier. Its tiny green screen flickered in the wind. This signal isn't random. It's a beacon, still transmitting. She turned the dial slowly. Static hissed and cleared for a moment. Through the crackle came a faint voice, male, strained, and broken by interference. ... if anyone. SEAL team coordinates. They're watching. The message repeated once before cutting off entirely. That's our intel team, Harper said. Her heart thudded hard. They're alive. Mason glanced at his wrist display, checking coordinates. Signals 20 miles north. We move at first light. Sir? Torres said, voice uneasy. If these guys were waiting for us here, odds are they'll expect us there too. Mason met his gaze. Then we give them something they don't expect. He looked at Harper, the wind howling between them. You good to lead recon? She nodded immediately. Always. By dawn, the storm had broken. The world lay still beneath a thick, glittering crust of ice. Pale light spilled across the valley, turning the snow to shards of silver. The team moved fast and low, cutting through narrow ravines and frozen creeks. Their breaths formed tiny clouds that vanished almost as soon as they appeared. Harper led point, her senses tuned to every sound, the crunch of snow beneath boots, the creak of ice, the faint hum of wind. Each noise could be life or death. At one point, Holt raised a fist, signaling a halt. Everyone froze. Harper's rifle came up instantly. What is it? He pointed toward a ridge ahead. Something metallic glinted in the sunlight, half buried beneath the snow. A sensor array. Harper's pulse jumped. Tripwire surveillance. Military grade. Can we bypass? Mason asked. She moved closer, studying the device. Not without triggering an alert. Whoever's out here knows exactly where we are. For a long moment, Mason said nothing. Then, in a low, deliberate tone, he said, "We go through." Quietly, fast. They advanced in tight formation, hearts pounding, knowing any mistake could end them. 10 minutes later, the valley opened into a clearing, and there it was. A half-collapsed research station, its satellite dishes bent and blackened, windows shattered. Smoke rose faintly from the east wing, still warm, still recent. Looks like a fight went down, Torres said, scanning the area. Harper moved ahead, sweeping her rifle through the doorway. The interior was chaos. Overturned tables, blood streaked on the floor, bullet casings everywhere. But what caught her attention was the wall. Pinned there, with a combat knife, was a photograph. It showed 6 people in winter gear, smiling, the missing intel team. Harper recognized their faces from the mission briefing. But someone had drawn a red X through 4 of them. Only 2 were left untouched. Mason tore it down. They're still out there. Harper crouched near a desk, scanning documents scattered across it. These aren't research notes, she said. They're data reports, transmissions, frequencies, drone feeds. Someone was tracking signal movement across Alaskan airspace. She flipped through the pages, her eyes narrowing. Every few lines, she saw coordinates, and next to them, U.S. military call signs. This wasn't an intel collection op, she said. It was surveillance on our own missions. Mason looked grim. You're saying... I'm saying someone inside the system is running Black Ops off the record. Before anyone could respond, McCready's voice crackled through the comms. Movement. East window. Everyone dropped low, rifles aimed. A figure stumbled from the shadows, hands raised, limping. It was a man, his face pale, clothes torn, frostbitten. Harper rushed forward, grabbing him before he collapsed. His body was ice cold, his lips trembling. Who are you? She asked. He blinked up at her, voice barely audible. Special Agent Cole, NSA. Part of the intel team? Mason knelt beside him. Where's the rest of your team? Cole coughed, blood spattering the snow. Dead, most of them. They took Dr. Weiss. Who took her? Harper demanded. Cole's eyes darted toward the door, terrified. Not Russians. Americans. Contractors. Under a private division called Aegis Dynamics. The name hung in the air like a curse. Harper felt her stomach drop. Aegis was rumored to be a ghost organization. Black budget, off the books, supposedly dismantled years ago. But now, it was standing right in front of them. Cole grabbed her arm weakly. They're using drone tech, domestic surveillance models. Weiss refused to hand over the codes. They're hunting her now. Where? Mason asked. Cole's breath came shallow. Old radar station, 20 clicks west. Coordinates, 6417. His voice faded. Cole! Harper shook him, but his body went still. He was gone. Torres bowed his head. Damn it. Mason stood, his expression unreadable. We find Weiss before Aegis does. Move out. Hours later, the team crested a ridge overlooking an abandoned radar facility. A massive structure built into the mountainside. Its radar dish broken. Its compound quiet. Harper peered through her scope. No visible movement. But the snow's too clean. Someone's cleared the tracks. Mason nodded. They're inside. They advanced silently, weaving between snowbanks, keeping their weapons ready. Harper took point, cutting through the side fence and slipping through first. Inside the facility, everything was dark. The air smelled of oil and metal. Footsteps echoed faintly in the halls. Harper's flashlight beam cut across old computer terminals, broken chairs, and torn cables. Then she saw something that made her stop cold. A map of Alaska spread across a table, dotted with red markers. Every marker was near a military base. Torres whispered, "They're mapping defense grids." Harper's eyes drifted lower, to a file labeled Project Icefall. She opened it. Inside were diagrams, not weapons, but algorithms. Data flow structures. AI integration schematics. This isn't about intel, she murmured. It's about control. A voice came from behind her, calm, deliberate, and familiar. I was wondering when you'd figure that out. Harper spun around, rifle up. From the shadows stepped a man, tall, in full tactical gear, helmet off. His face was rugged, scarred, and unmistakably American. Commander Mason froze. Commander Reed? The man smiled faintly. It's good to see you again, Mason. Didn't think you'd actually take the bait. Harper's heart slammed against her ribs. You set us up. Reed tilted his head. Not you, Harper, them. You and your team were the test. To see who still plays by the old rules. Mason took a step forward, fury in his voice. Your Aegis? Reed's eyes glinted. I am Aegis. Before anyone could react, the lights in the facility flickered, and the sound of boots filled the hallways. Dozens of armed men began closing in. Harper raised her rifle. We're surrounded. Mason gave one order, quiet but clear. Hold your ground. The next second, the world exploded into chaos. Gunfire, smoke, echoing screams, and the heavy thud of boots rushing through snow and steel. As bullets ripped through the darkness, Harper ducked behind a console, heart pounding, mind racing. Reed's words echoed in her head. You were the test. And for the first time, Harper realized this mission wasn't about survival anymore. It was about truth. And the truth had just declared war. Gunfire tore through the old radar facility, echoing down its metal corridors like thunder rolling through a canyon. Harper ducked behind a row of steel cabinets, shards of concrete flying past her as bullets punched into the wall. Sparks erupted, lighting up the smoke-filled air. Every sound felt amplified, the pop of rifles, the hiss of ricochets, the pounding rhythm of her heartbeat in her ears. Vega, suppress right flank. Mason's voice cut through the coms, rough and commanding. Vega's M249 roared to life, its belt-fed round spraying across the hallway. Enemy silhouettes scattered, shadows dissolving into flashes of muzzle fire. Torres threw a smoke grenade, filling the air with thick gray haze. We need an exit, Commander, he shouted. Mason crouched beside Harper, scanning the map glowing faintly on his wrist display. Secondary tunnel, northwest sector. 2 levels down. Copy that, Harper said, already moving. Her rifle stayed tight to her shoulder, eyes focused, breathing steady despite the chaos. Years of combat training clicked into place. Fear became clarity, adrenaline became focus. The team advanced through the corridor, stepping over debris and fallen attackers. Harper's boots slipped on ice forming beneath leaking pipes, but she didn't slow. Every turn brought more danger, more reminders that this wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was survival. They reached a stairwell, narrow, dark, and half collapsed. Holt went first, scanning corners, his flashlight beam bouncing off rusted rails. Harper followed, covering the rear. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The hum of machinery faded until all that remained was the distant crack of gunfire above them. At the bottom of the stairs, Harper stopped. She could feel something, that same electric pulse that always warned her right before an ambush. She raised her hand. Wait, the others froze. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light. A faint red glow pulsed along the floor ahead, a laser tripwire nearly invisible in the haze. Booby-trapped, she murmured. They knew we'd come this way. Mason crouched beside her, studying it. Can you disarm? She nodded. Give me 10 seconds. Her gloved fingers moved delicately over the small sensor embedded in the wall. Sweat beaded under her helmet as she clipped a wire, paused, then another. The glow flickered once, then died. Clear. Good work, Mason said quietly. They pressed forward, emerging into a lower chamber that looked like an old control room. Monitors lined the walls, most shattered or dark. A few still flickered with static. In the center stood a massive steel table, and on it, an open laptop connected to a hard drive. Harper approached slowly, her breath visible in the cold. The screen displayed live data streams, GPS coordinates, drone feeds, encrypted signals bouncing across multiple channels. "What the hell is this?" Torres muttered. Harper scrolled through the files. Her eyes widened. "They're tracking U.S. drone patrols across the Arctic corridor. Military operations. This data shouldn't exist outside command." Mason's jaw tightened. So Aegis isn't rogue. They're embedded. Before anyone could respond, the static on one of the monitors cleared. A live feed appeared, showing a woman tied to a chair inside a dimly lit bunker. Her face was bruised, her parka torn. "Dr. Weiss," Harper whispered. The camera angle shifted, revealing another figure beside her. Commander Reed. He looked calm, almost casual, leaning against the wall with a pistol in hand. "Harper Lane," his voice crackled through the speaker, smooth and cold. "You've made good time." Mason stepped closer. "Reed, you're going to answer for this." Reed smirked. "You still think you're in control, old friend? You came out here chasing ghosts, and you found exactly what we wanted you to find. Where's Weiss?" Harper demanded. "She's right here," Reed said, turning to the camera. "Tell them, Doctor." Weiss lifted her head weakly. "Don't come here. It's a trap." Then the screen went black. Harper slammed her fist against the table. "We have to move, now." Mason nodded. "Torres, grab that drive. Vega, get explosives ready. We're burning this place to the ground when we're done." As Torres unplugged the hard drive, alarms blared through the facility, shrill, metallic, echoing in every direction. Red lights began flashing across the walls. "They're locking us in," McCready shouted. "Go," Mason barked. "Move!" The team sprinted through the lower tunnels, the sound of boots pounding metal echoing behind them. Harper fired back over her shoulder as more Aegis soldiers poured in, their rifles spitting arcs of muzzle flash in the dark. They reached a service hatch, half buried in ice. Vega planted a shaped charge, the timer blinking red. "Fire in 5. They took cover as the explosion ripped through the air, the blast wave knocking snow and debris everywhere. The hatch blew open, revealing a narrow crawl space leading out to the snow-covered hillside. "Out, out, out," Mason ordered. One by one they crawled through, emerging into blinding daylight. The cold hit like a wall, but the sight ahead stopped them all. Below the ridge, a convoy of black vehicles cut across the frozen tundra, sleek, armored, and fast. Torres cursed. "They're moving Weiss." Harper dropped to one knee, raising her rifle and peering through the scope. She caught a glimpse of Weiss inside one of the trucks, head down, guarded by 2 armed men. "We can intercept," she said. "They're following the river path. If we cut across that ridge, we can flank them before they reach the valley road." Mason checked his GPS. "It's risky. We're low on ammo." Harper didn't hesitate. "We don't get another shot." He looked at her, then nodded. "All right. Vega, Torres, flank left. Harper, you're with me." They sprinted through the snow, lungs burning, boots sinking deep with every step. The cold sliced into their faces, but the adrenaline drowned it out. From the ridge, Harper steadied her rifle, lining up the lead vehicle. The scope flickered slightly from the heat shimmer, but her aim held steady. "2 shots," Mason said beside her. "On my mark. Ready. 3, 2, 1. Crack." Her bullet shattered the driver's window. The vehicle swerved violently, skidding across the ice before flipping onto its side. Smoke poured from the wreck. The other trucks screeched to a halt. Aegis agents jumped out, forming defensive lines. Viga's machine gun roared from the left flank, cutting down 2 instantly. Harper reloaded, moving downhill with Mason. Snow sprayed up with each step, bullets whizzing past like angry hornets. She dropped another target, then another. At the overturned vehicle, Harper yanked the door open. Weiss was still inside, dazed but alive. "Dr. Weiss," Harper shouted. "We're here to get you out." Weiss blinked, coughing. "You shouldn't have come." "Too late," Harper said, helping her out. Mason covered them, firing controlled bursts toward the tree line. "We've got company, Lane." From the north ridge, a helicopter roared into view. Matte black, no insignia, rotors slicing the air. It began to descend, side doors opening to reveal more Aegis troops with heavy weapons. Harper grabbed Weiss and pulled her behind a rock. "They're not letting her go." Mason keyed his comms. "Torres, we need that bird down now." "Copy that." Torres' voice came through, strained. "Give me 10 seconds." The chopper banked closer, its gunner opening fire. Snow exploded around them, chunks of ice raining down. Torres' RPG whooshed through the air, a single streak of smoke cutting across the sky, and slammed straight into the helicopter's tail. The explosion lit up the valley, sending debris spinning as the chopper crashed in a burst of flame. The blast's heat washed over them, melting the snow for a moment before the cold swallowed it again. Mason turned to Harper. "We got her. Let's move before backup comes." Harper nodded, supporting Weiss as they retreated up the ridge. The doctor's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "They'll never stop," she said quietly. "You don't understand what they've built." Harper looked at her. "Then help us understand." Weiss met her eyes. Project Icefall wasn't surveillance. It's command override. A system that can take control of any unmanned U.S. drone anywhere in the world. Harper felt the blood drain from her face. They could launch strikes without authorization. Weiss nodded. "And make it look like you did." Mason exhaled slowly, the reality sinking in. "Then we just became the biggest liabilities on the planet." Behind them, smoke from the wreckage curled into the frozen sky. Ahead, endless white stretched toward the horizon. And somewhere out there, Harper knew, Commander Reed was still alive, watching, waiting, planning his next move. The war for the truth had only just begun. The world around them had turned into an ocean of snow and silence. The crash site still burned behind them, a plume of black smoke twisting into the pale Alaskan sky. Harper didn't look back. There was no time. The rotor wash from the fallen helicopter had already scattered tracks, which meant they had only minutes before Aegis reinforcements found their trail. Mason led from the front, his rifle raised, scanning constantly. Weiss stumbled between him and Harper, her breath ragged, eyes glassy from exhaustion. The freezing wind clawed at their faces, but no one spoke. Every sound could carry. Finally, when they reached a jagged ridge that overlooked a frozen valley, Mason signaled a halt. "Take 5, he said quietly. Torres dropped his pack and knelt, checking ammo. 2 mags left. Vega cursed under his breath. "Make that 1.5 for me." Harper sat beside Weiss, pulling a thermal blanket from her kit. "You need to stay conscious, Doctor." Weiss nodded faintly, her lips pale. "I haven't slept in 2 days. They kept moving me from base to base. Said I was too valuable to keep in one place." Harper glanced at Mason. "She's no good to us if she collapses." Mason's expression was grim. "We can't stop long. We're exposed out here." Weiss looked up suddenly, her eyes sharp despite the fatigue. "There's an outpost, not far. Old mining cabin used by the survey teams." If it's still standing, we can rest there. Harper helped her to her feet. Then lead the way. The sun hung low and red by the time they reached the cabin, a small, weather-beaten structure half buried in snow. Its windows were frosted over, its roof sagging, but it still stood. Mason cleared the entrance first, weapon raised. All clear. Inside, it smelled of wood smoke and rust. A single stove stood in the corner, long cold. Torres and Vega started a small fire while Harper unrolled her med kit. She cleaned the frostbite burns on Weiss's wrists and handed her a ration bar. "You said Aegis was using drones," Harper said, breaking the silence. "How many?" Weiss stared into the fire, her face lit orange by the flames. "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. They've been integrating the control algorithms into the Arctic Defense Network for months. Icefall is the key, a master override system that can reroute control of any U.S. drone strike network." Mason frowned. "So one command could turn our own weapons against us?" "Exactly," Weiss said softly. "And once Icefall goes online, it'll be invisible, buried in the code of our defense mainframe. No one will even know it's been hijacked." Harper felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "What's their endgame?" Weiss met her gaze. "Power. Whoever controls Icefall controls the narrative. Aegis can start wars, end them, and blame anyone they want." The room went silent. Mason stood by the window, watching the horizon. "Then we take it out." Weiss hesitated. "There's one way. A kill switch built into the prototype. I designed it as a failsafe. But it's not here. It's in Washington, stored under NORAD encryption." Harper exhaled slowly. "So we have to get you to D.C. Mason turned. "We'll never make it through normal channels. The moment Command hears we're alive, they'll flag us as rogue." Torres nodded grimly. "They'll say we went off mission, that we killed use personnel." Harper stared into the flames, her jaw tightening. "Then we go dark. No comms, no signals. We move like ghosts." Hours passed. The fire burned low, casting long shadows on the cabin walls. Outside, wind moaned through the cracks. Harper couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, cleaning her rifle, the same motion she'd been doing the night Mason had first called her name in that quiet armory. It felt like a lifetime ago. Mason approached, his footsteps soft on the wooden floor. "You should rest." "I'll sleep when we're safe," she said without looking up. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You ever get tired of being right?" "Every damn day." He chuckled quietly. Then, after a pause, his tone shifted. "Back in Afghanistan, when you took that sniper round for your squad, you could have quit after that. Nobody would have blamed you." Harper's hands stilled on the rifle. "Yeah, well, quitting never felt right." He looked at her, studying her face, the exhaustion, the resolve. "You're not the same soldier you were then." "None of us are," she replied softly. "The war changes you. It doesn't care how strong you are. It just decides what's left." A long silence passed between them, filled only by the crackle of fire. Finally, Mason said quietly, "When this is over, what do you want?" Harper smiled faintly, though her eyes were distant. "A day without orders. A sky without noise." Mason nodded slowly. "I'll drink to that." But before the silence could settle again, Torres's voice cut through the calm. "Contact," he whispered. "Movement outside." In an instant, the fire was doused. The room plunged into darkness. Everyone moved into position, rifles ready, eyes straining through the night. Harper pressed to the window, peering into the white expanse. At first, she saw nothing. Then, a flicker of movement near the tree line. Figures in winter camo, moving low, deliberate. Thermals, Mason said. Harper switched her scope mode. Heat signatures lit up. 5, maybe 6 hostiles. They found us, she whispered. Mason gave the order with quiet precision. No sound until my mark. Vega, you cover the south window. Torres, west. Harper, take the ridge. She slipped outside, the cold hitting like a slap. Snow crunched softly beneath her boots as she climbed the short rise beside the cabin. The night sky was a canopy of stars, the moon reflecting faintly off the snow. She took a prone position, steadying her rifle. Through her scope, she watched the figures advancing, methodical, disciplined. Too good to be just scouts. She aimed, breath slow and measured. The crosshairs settled on the lead figure. Crack. The body dropped instantly. The others scattered, shouting in the distance. Gunfire erupted, muffled pops and echoing bursts across the valley. Vega's machine gun thundered from inside the cabin, lighting the night. Harper moved to a new position, firing twice more. The air filled with the stinging scent of cordite and snow dust. Then suddenly, silence. The last body fell into the drift below. Harper stayed still, scanning for movement. None came. Only the moan of the wind returned. Clear, Mason called quietly. She exhaled, rising from her position and heading back to the cabin. Inside, Torres was reloading. Weiss crouched behind a table, trembling but alive. Mason checked one of the fallen attackers near the door. He rolled the body over and froze. The man wasn't Aegis. He wore a U.S. Army patch. Harper felt her stomach twist. Oh no. Mason's face hardened. They've turned our own people on us. Weiss's voice trembled. If Aegis embedded Icefall into the military network, they can send false orders, make command think you're the enemy. Torres swore. We just killed our own backup. Mason didn't flinch. No, they killed them the moment they fed them the lie. He stood, shoulders squared. We move at dawn. We get Weiss to the extraction point. We find a way out of this snow, and we expose the truth, no matter who comes after us. Harper nodded, tightening her rifle strap. Her breath fogged in the cold. Then let's make sure the world knows who fired first. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the sound of distant rotors. Faint, but unmistakable. They were being hunted again. But this time, Harper Lane wasn't running. She was preparing for war. The wind screamed like a living thing through the canyon, slicing through their parkas, erasing every trace of warmth left in their bones. Harper led the group single file, her rifle tight across her chest, eyes cutting through the white void. The snow had stopped, but the air was razor sharp, each breath like inhaling glass. They'd left the cabin hours ago, torched it to the ground after the firefight. Mason's call. No evidence, no trail. But it didn't matter. Their enemies had satellites, drones, and soldiers who believed the wrong people were traitors. They were ghosts now, hunted, disavowed, outnumbered. Torres trudged behind Harper, muttering through clenched teeth. We're running on fumes. One more night like this, and Weiss won't make it. Harper glanced back. Weiss stumbled but kept moving, her pale face streaked with frost. Mason was beside her, one arm ready to steady her at any moment. Vega brought up the rear, his machine gun hanging heavy from his shoulder. The silence stretched too long, broken only by the crunch of boots in snow. Then, faintly, Harper heard it, the low hum of rotors in the distance. Down, she hissed, dropping to a crouch. The team dove into the drifts, half buried by snow. Above them, a black silhouette streaked across the gray sky. A drone, sleek and angular, its red sensors sweeping like eyes in the dark. They waited 5 seconds, 10, 20, until the hum faded. Harper exhaled, frost spilling from her lips. They've got aerials now. Mason cursed under his breath. They're tightening the noose. Weiss looked up, her voice shaking. There's a radio relay outpost near the ridge. If we can reach it, I can access the military network, maybe prove who's behind the false orders. Or they'll trace the signal and finish what they started, Vega muttered. Harper looked to Mason. Worth the risk? He nodded. We've got nothing left to lose. It took them 6 brutal hours to reach the ridge. The sun dipped low behind the mountains, washing the snowfield in a blood-red glow. The outpost was half collapsed, its satellite dish broken, walls covered in ice. Inside, the equipment was ancient, relics from the Cold War, but the power unit still hummed faintly. Weiss sat at the console, fingers trembling as she connected a tangle of wires. Harper stood guard at the door, scanning the tree line. Torres and Vega took positions outside, their rifles ready. Mason paced behind Weiss. You sure you can do this? Weiss didn't look up. I built half the architecture they corrupted. If anyone can trace the false commands, it's me. Harper watched as lines of code flickered across the old monitor. The sound of typing filled the room, fast, rhythmic, desperate. Then Weiss froze. Her screen filled with red warnings. What is it? Mason asked. Her voice cracked. They're watching the same network. Someone's tracing me. Cut the line, Mason ordered. Wait, she said sharply. If I can isolate their access point, I can. The lights in the outpost flickered. The power surged. Then a voice, cold, digital, distorted, filled the radio speakers. You should have stayed buried, Commander Mason. The voice was male, deep, controlled. Mason stiffened. Reed, Harper turned sharply. You know that voice? Mason's jaw tightened. Commander Blake Reed, CI, a counter-ops liaison. I worked under him before Aegis. Reed's voice came again, echoing with eerie calm. I gave you a clean exit, Mason, a retirement package, a chance to disappear. But you had to dig where you didn't belong. Harper's hand hovered over her rifle. He's running the operation. That woman beside you, Dr. Weiss, she's a liability. You don't understand what Icefall really is. It's not about war. It's about control. The world's moving too fast for democracy. We're stabilizing it. Mason stepped forward, eyes burning. You're playing God, Reed. Someone has to. The speakers went dead. The outpost went silent. Weiss stared at the screen. The data had been wiped. He's locked me out. He knows we're alive. Mason turned. Then we move, now. But before they could exit, the night outside exploded in light. Flare bursts illuminated the snow, red and white against the dark. Vega's voice shouted from outside. Contact! East slope. Gunfire erupted, the sharp staccato echoing off the mountains. Harper and Mason dove for cover, returning fire through the broken windows. The air filled with shouts and muzzle flashes. Torres's voice cut through the chaos. They've got thermal gear. I count 8, maybe 10. Suppress and move. Mason barked. Harper laid down covering fire, bullets slicing through the snow, while Weiss crawled toward the back door. Mason grabbed her arm. You run on my call, understand? Weiss nodded, shaking. Vega roared from the doorway, firing a long burst that mowed down 2 silhouettes charging through the smoke. Come on, you bastards. Then a grenade rolled through the snow and into the cabin. Down, Harper screamed. The explosion ripped through the room, flinging debris and smoke. The world spun. Her ears rang. She blinked through the haze. The door was gone. Vega was on the ground, unmoving. Vega! She cried, crawling toward him. Blood spread across the snow beneath him. He coughed, managing a weak grin. Go. Finish it, Harper. Mason grabbed her shoulder. We have to move. Torres covered their retreat, firing short, controlled bursts as they pulled Weiss through the shattered back wall. They stumbled down a frozen ravine, the wind howling like fury around them. Behind them, the outpost burned, a pyre against the dark. They ran until their legs gave out, until every breath was pain. Finally, Mason called a halt behind a ridge. Torres collapsed beside him, gasping. Viga's gone. Harper sank into the snow, trembling, her face streaked with soot and grief. We're losing everyone. Weiss crouched near her, tears freezing on her cheeks. We can still stop them. Reed said icefall isn't just a weapon. He said it's control, which means there's still a command source. If we can find it, Mason raised his head slowly. We find the source, we cut off the head. Harper looked at him, her voice hoarse. You know where to start? He nodded grimly. Reed's home base, Arlington. He's using black channels through the Pentagon defense grid. Weiss can break in, but we'll have to go right through the lion's den. Torres looked up, half laughing through exhaustion. You're saying we walk into D.C. as fugitives? Mason's tone hardened. Not walk, infiltrate. Harper wiped blood from her temple and forced a shaky smile. Guess it's time the ghosts came home. The wind carried the faint echo of more aircraft far to the north, the hunt still on. But this time, the hunted were ready to strike back. Mason looked to Harper, his eyes steady despite the exhaustion. You still in this? Harper chambered around, her voice steady and cold. Until the end. He nodded once. Then we move at dawn. As the first light broke over the horizon, painting the snow gold, Harper felt something she hadn't in days, a flicker of hope. They were battered, outnumbered, and bleeding. But they had the truth, and that was a weapon no army could silence. The fight was far from over. It was only just beginning. The streets of Washington were eerily quiet as Harper, Mason, Weiss, and Torres moved under the cover of pre-dawn darkness. The city was a different battlefield. No snow, no mountains, but concrete, shadows, and cameras at every corner. Icefall had reached into every fiber of their country's defense network. Every movement had to be silent, calculated, and perfect. They avoided main roads, slipping through alleyways and maintenance tunnels beneath government buildings. Weiss carried a small laptop in a reinforced case, a key to exposing icefall and halting Aegis's manipulation. Harper's rifle stayed tight against her shoulder, eyes scanning every corner, every flicker of motion. Mason led the formation, tactical awareness honed from decades of SEAL operations. Torres followed with eyes on the rooftops, ready to alert at the first sign of a drone. We reached the Pentagon's mainframe from the sub-level access, Mason said quietly. Once Weiss uploads the override, we get the hell out. Weiss paused, fingers trembling slightly over the laptop's keyboard. If this fails, Icefall will deploy instantly. I mean it, any unmanned drone, anywhere. Strike zones, intercepts, they can make it look like a rogue attack. We could be painted as traitors before anyone even knows we were right. Harper exhaled, frost still lingering in her breath from weeks in Alaska. Then we don't fail. They reached the maintenance tunnels under the Pentagon. Guards were sparse, but the infrared sensors were still active. Harper disabled a small motion detector with practiced precision, her gloved fingers delicate and steady. Door ahead, Torres whispered. 2 guards, side entrance. Harper took the lead. With Mason covering her, she moved silently, approaching the first guard. One swift strike, pressure point. The man collapsed without a sound. The second guard never saw it coming. Inside, the sub-level was cold, metal walls echoing every step. Weiss plugged in the laptop, the interface immediately recognizing the icefall system. "Here goes nothing," she whispered, fingers flying across keys. Encryption barriers fell one by one. Lines of code scrolled faster than Harper could read. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed throughout the corridor. "They've traced us," Torres yelled. "We're compromised." Mason grabbed Harper's arm. "We hold them here. Weiss finishes the upload. Everyone else, cover her." They moved into the server room, taking positions behind racks of blinking equipment. Outside, heavy boots approached. Voices shouted commands, familiar, American. Harper raised her rifle, sighting the first man in. She fired a controlled shot, one down, one to go. Mason followed, precise and efficient. Through the chaos, Weiss continued typing, sweat and blood streaking her face. Harper peeked over a console, scanning the hallway. A shadow moved, tall, familiar. Commander Blake Reed. Reed's grin was ice cold. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Mason growled. "It's over, Reed. Give up." Reed shook his head slowly. "You don't get it. Icefall isn't just a program. It's the future. Order, stability, controlled from the top. You're too blind to see it." Harper leveled her rifle. "Then the top should be accountable." Reed raised his hands, slowly, deliberately. But behind him, more Aegis operatives closed in. Weiss hit the final key. "Upload complete." A soft chime echoed from the laptop. Harper felt a weight lift. Icefall was disabled. The system would no longer allow unauthorized commands. Every rogue drone, every potential false strike, frozen in place. Reed's eyes widened. "No, this can't happen." Harper fired a shot into the ceiling behind him. Mason tackled Reed, pinning him to the floor. Weiss joined, activating a containment protocol that would lock him in the server room until authorities arrived. Outside, alarms still screamed, but the primary threat was neutralized. Icefall's mainframe blinked green, a signal of success. Hours later, after slipping out through service tunnels, the team watched the sunrise from a rooftop near the Potomac. "We're not in the clear yet," Mason said, keeping a watchful eye on the streets. "They'll try to spin this, make us look like the enemy." Weiss hugged herself tightly, shivering but smiling faintly. "At least Icefall is offline. The world won't be a weapon in the hands of a few anymore." Harper lowered her rifle. Exhaustion etched into every line of her body. "We lost a lot out there. Vega, others. But we finished what they started." Torres exhaled, leaning against the wall. "And made a few ghosts very real." Mason looked at Harper. "You ever think this is the last time you'll be called?" She smirked faintly. "No, but it won't matter. I know the mission is bigger than one name." Weiss stepped forward, her eyes clear now. "You saved countless lives today, and history will remember that, even if some people try to erase it." Harper nodded. She let the rifle rest on the ledge, finally allowing herself a breath of relief. The city stretched before them. Monuments, government buildings, and streets that held secrets they could barely comprehend. But in that moment, they had rewritten the rules. Mason placed a hand on Harper's shoulder. "We still have a choice. Go back to the shadows, or step into the light and make them accountable." Harper gazed at the horizon. She thought of the cold mountains, the snow, the ghosts they left behind, and the people they saved. "The light," she said. "We step into the light." Weeks later, congressional hearings exposed Aegis dynamics, Icefall, and Reed's betrayal. Every officer involved faced scrutiny. Harper, Mason, Weiss, and Torres were heralded as heroes, though the scars of their journey remained, etched in memory and body. Harper returned to the base armory for the first time since the mission began. She cleaned her rifle in silence, the familiar routine grounding her. But now, each motion carried the weight of all they had endured: the mountains, the snow, the firefights, the betrayals. A voice called her name. Commander Mason appeared beside her, offering a faint grin. Still cleaning guns in silence? Harper looked up, smirked. Some habits die hard. He nodded, understanding that silence could speak volumes. Outside, the sun rose over the base, spilling light across the weapons racks, the barracks, and the training grounds. Harper felt a sense of peace, hard-earned, fragile, but real. She had survived. They had all survived. And for the first time in months, the mission was truly over. But somewhere deep in her mind, Harper knew one truth: the world was never truly safe. Someone would always call her name. And when they did, she would be ready.